about the soul. Welcome to the Spiritual Justice Show with me, Eric S. Lee. You've heard me say it before. For too long, we thought restorative justice alone could save us. But repairing harm without changing systems doesn't end the cycle. Social justice fights for equity, but without spirit, the work becomes a grind. Transformative justice seeks culture change, but without compassion, it struggles to hold. Spiritual justice completes the circle. It heals the heart while changing the system. It restores dignity while shifting culture. It brings spirit back into justice. Each week, I'll bring together leaders, healers, and change makers to explore a new vision of justice: restorative, transformative, and deeply spiritual. And people like you, spiritual justice warriors who choose courage, compassion, and creativity in action. Welcome to the Spiritual Justice Show, where inner peace meets collective purpose. And today, we welcome Dr. Joe Sanders, leadership development expert, speaker, mentor, retired Air Force colonel, and CEO of Colorado Uplift, an organization dedicated to providing life-changing mentorship and leadership development to urban youth. Dr. Sanders has devoted his life to developing leaders of character and helping people recognize the power and responsibility they carry to positively impact the world around them. Before leading Colorado Uplift, he served as director of the Center for Character and Leadership Development at the United States Air Force Academy and has spent decades teaching, mentoring, and speaking on servant leadership, moral courage, transformational change, and human potential. He holds a PhD in leadership and human resource development from Colorado State University and is the author of the powerful and timely book, Unreasonable Responsibility, a bold call to break the cycle of entitlement, reclaim personal agency, and lead with purpose in a world desperately in need of courageous leadership. At the heart of Joe's message is a profound belief that leadership is not about position or status, but about responsibility, the willingness to influence, serve, and elevate others regardless of circumstance. Rooted deeply in faith, service, and community, Joe has also led ministry efforts serving homeless and continues to inspire audiences across the country through his work, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to developing the next generation of leaders. Joe and his wife, Lourdes, are the proud parents of Isaiah, Jasmine, and Josiah, and together they continue building a legacy centered on faith, service, leadership, and love. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Joe Sanders to the Spiritual Justice Show. Dr. Sanders, thank you so much for appearing with us today. It's great to have you. I am so looking for this conversation, looking forward to this conversation. We spoke earlier and I was energized after that conversation, and I imagine I will be just as much so today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's mutual. I definitely left our conversation energized as well, and I was looking forward to our conversation today as well. So thank you.
Okay, great. So let's start us off. I'm going to let you talk, and we've got a split here because you've got this wonderful organization that you lead, and you've got this great and powerful book that you've also shared with the world. Let's start with the organization Colorado Uplift, and just tell us a little bit about what you guys do there.
Yeah, so Colorado Uplift, as you mentioned in kind of the introduction, it's all about reaching under-resourced youth and building up these urban leaders. And we do that by forming long-term, life-changing relationships with these urban youth. And, you know, the inception of Colorado Uplift was back in 1982. And we were founded on a basic premise that every child is infinitely valuable, has infinite value and worth. And we fundamentally believe that the best investment we can make in our future is the investment that we make in our youth today. And so that's something that really grounds and undergirds what we do at Colorado Uplift, really trying to invest in our students. But the other thing that you mentioned, and I know we'll probably get into this a little bit later, is this idea of not just transforming individual lives, but really trying to transform communities, because we believe as we raise up these leaders, they will in turn go and have an impact on their community. And there's a recursive relationship between, the individual and communities. And the Greeks talk about this, and you and I talked about this before. The good citizen, good societies. And so, really, at the heart of our work is transforming lives, and these lives for these students. But ultimately, we want to see our communities transformed as well. And so we go about doing that with the variety of programs. We believe at the core of what we do is our mentoring, where we come alongside our students and we really do life with our students. And there's a lot of studies out there that talk about how having a caring, consistent adult in a person's life can completely change the trajectory of their lives. And that's what our mentors do for our students. We have an in-school program where these same mentors are actually teaching in the classrooms, and we're teaching them things like respect and dignity, integrity at the academic level, and they actually get high school credit for that. We have a middle school program as well where they get credit, but then the high school students are able to go and teach the same character qualities to the elementary schools in the local community as well. So we're able to reach students at the elementary, middle, and high school level in the class talking about character qualities. And I'll pause there, but we have other programming from the after school perspective, like adventure programming and things like that we can get into. But the bottom line is really trying to equip our students to eventually become leaders so that they can impact their communities.
That's great. Thank you. And it's like it's coming back to me as we talk, because philosophically in the way we approach, and even the premise and the approach of the show and the philosophy that drives us, there's a lot of similarities. We believe in the work we do at Full Circle Restorative Justice that, if we can transform this system, and we work within the criminal justice system in schools, but if we create this system that helps identify that inherent natural beauty that's within all individuals at birth in
Yes.
these youth, that
Yes.
somehow gets disrupted by whatever toxicity or trauma that's in their environment, if we can identify that and help elevate it, and really elevate that within their own psyches as we
Yes.
do the community, then we are creating people who can grow into the full potential that they were blessed with at their birth. And that is just,
Absolutely.
oh my God, everybody who's watching the show that knows me and has watched follow along understands, oh yes, Dr. Sanders is the perfect embodiment of that whole thing. So thank you so much for that work, because to me, and to a lot of others who follow us, that is the most important work, right? Again, and I say this, and I got some funding based on this because it brought me to tears. And I don't claim to be Dr. King. No, I'm not even in the realm. But something he said resonates with me, and the focus on youth, the way that you do, and the way that we do at Full Circle and at the Spiritual Justice Show, it's like we can see it, we can feel it, we can see the vision for how this creates a completely different community and a completely
Yes.
different society, because of the way you build leaders, the way you mentor leaders, the way you plant
Mhm.
those seeds and grow
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
And as Dr. King said, back to my point, I may not get there with you, but
Mm.
I have seen the mountaintop. And hey, I'm 64. This work is big, and it goes beyond. I will be passing the baton at some point for somebody else to pick up, as maybe you will as well. You're a younger man. You're younger than me. So not as soon.
Not
But
much.
it's like yeah, it's a long-term, long game with
Yes.
immediate impacts.
Yes, yes, and again, and so and to your point about the generational cycles that we're able to influence, and we're replacing those cycles. And you have, clearly these are cycles of poverty and addictions and things like that we see in our students and our families' lives. But when we can intervene appropriately, now all of a sudden these new generational cycles are now cycles of success and cycles of significance, right? And then the other thing that you said that I love, and you talk about the connection between the system and kind of the inner person, right, and connecting that. And I think that's a beautiful way of talking about inside the broader system is the human system, right? Which is the most important system. And so oftentimes that gets overlooked. I see sometimes how we come in and we tinker with the material system, or we tinker with the infrastructures of things, and even the political system, like you said, the justice system, but we lose the real heart of the system, which is the human system, right? In the people's inner soul. So again, back to
Right.
you. Thank you for your perspective and your philosophy and getting that out there, because it is
Mhm.
so critical that people understand that connection between the broader system and humanity.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, you are activating so many different philosophies and so many different voices, that kind of led me to where I am in my path, and my desire to contribute and help to uplift and elevate. Uplift is perfectly appropriate here.
Yes.
One of them, and maybe you have heard about this. Are you familiar with the Pygmalion effect?
Yes.
And so that drives us. It's like,
Mm.
for those of you who are not familiar, there was a study done, and I'm going to give you the brief, because details I lose. Social scientists did a study. They went to some educators and told these educators that they had identified 10 students in the school that
Mm.
were primed for a great academic breakthrough, and that they identified, these 10 students. They told the educators, and so they went through the school year, and they came back the next year and they retested the kids, and sure enough, those 10 students had breakthroughs emotionally, with their emotional intelligence. Their test scores went up. They were more active. They were more socially engaged. All of these academic indicators were just going through the roof.
Mhm.
Those social scientists then um, told those instructors that they had just picked those kids from random,
Mhm.
and they weren't specified that those
Yes.
10 kids were due
Yes.
for anything, but it
Yeah.
was in fact how those kids were nurtured and treated, and
Yes.
and maybe just as importantly, the belief of the instructors that they were valuable, that was inside of them. They were able to draw it out. So that whole thing is just, it drives us. And we'll talk later about the Greek mythology behind it, but the sculpture Pygmalion and that whole story goes even further. We'll do that on a different episode.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just
that's good.
fascinating stuff.
It really is. And I just, think so much about what we do with our students and how we try to hold our students and being able to have them see themselves, but us starting with seeing them as something different than maybe society tries to tell them, that they are, right? A different identity. And when you were sharing that, because I'm familiar with that concept, I think about a young lady who graduated a few years ago from our program, and she had a pretty rough upbringing. If I were to talk to you about her, domestic situation, it would probably bring tears to your eyes. And because of this, she had developed a pretty hard exterior and really standoffish. But what I noticed as we were doing different activities, there was a soft spot in there every now and then. And I noticed that she just really, really had the ability to connect and lead and step up and be assertive where she needed to be. And so I remember telling her, hey, you know what? I saw you lead today. And I just challenged her just to keep leading, keep being a leader. And as I would see her from time to time, I would remind her that she was a leader. Again, how I saw her was as a leader. And after she graduated, she came up to me and she thanked me for seeing the leader in her, right? And calling that forth. And that's what I think we can do. I mean, how we see and what we believe about people, it matters. To the Pygmalion effect, it really matters. It also reminds me of one of my favorite African proverbs that a friend of mine shared with me. And he says, if you want to teach somebody how to kill an animal and how to maybe even feed their family, you give them a spear. But if you want to teach them how to feed their village, you call them hunter. And so the idea was how you see them and how you get them to see themselves shapes how they show up. And I think back to your, discussion about the Pygmalion effect. It's so much about what we believe in others and how we get them to believe in themselves. That's what comes out. You want students that perform well. Well, you believe that they can perform well, and there's students that have high, potential. They'll rise to that potential. You want leaders in our community. You see them as leaders. You believe they're leaders, and they'll rise to that potential. And so much of it is how we frame and how we see people and what we believe about them.
That's great. So talk to us a little bit about here we are. How did you get to this work? How did this work find you? How did you find this work?
Oh, okay, yeah. So for me, as you mentioned in my bio, I spent over 23 years in the Air Force. And much of that time I spent at the Air Force Academy, at the Center for Character and Leadership Development, as well as the Behavior Science Department. And so that's how I spent about 12 years of my life, kind of split between the Department of Behavior Science and the Center for Character and Leadership Development. But towards the end of my time in the Air Force, I had an opportunity to go and visit with my dad down in Louisiana. My father is a pastor, and he's also a licensed professional counselor.
Mm.
And in his capacity as a counselor, he worked in group homes with boys' homes and girls' homes. But in this particular case, it was a boys' home. He was working in a lot of foster care kids there. And he asked me to come and speak with these young men about life, about goals, about, leadership, the same kind of things I talked to my cadets about. Like again, I was at the academy at the time. So I, went home and visited my dad. And I was sitting in this group home one day, and I was talking to a group of young men about potential and about possibilities. And what really struck me and ultimately started to haunt me was that these kids, these young men, could not see possibilities beyond the four street corners they were currently in.
Mm.
They had no schema. They couldn't fathom anything beyond what they were currently living and seeing day to day. And so I remember going back to the academy after, visiting my father, return from leave, and I'm in the hallways and I'm hearing these cadets talk about what jet they're going to fly and what immersion program. Am I going to go to Spain this year? Am I going to Italy for my immersion program? And they're a few years older than these young men that I was with down in Louisiana, but the trajectory of their lives were completely different. And there was something about that, like I said, that did haunt me. And I remember just, going to a little closet in our bedroom, just really just praying, and again, my heart was just heavy and just burdened for these youth that I had spent some time with. And I remember over time just getting to the place where I just really realized I could not fulfill my divine purpose in life and remain in the Air Force, remain at the Air Force Academy. I had to create space to make myself available to serve the kinds of kids and the kinds of youth, the kinds of young men that I had spent time with down there. And so I stepped out of the Air Force and kind of really stepped out on faith. I had no idea about Colorado Uplift at that time, but I knew I needed to work with a different demographic and a different population than I was working with at the Air Force Academy.
Mm.
And then over time, eventually I was introduced to Colorado Uplift, and they were actually looking for a CEO at the time. And I applied for the position. And fast forward 8.5 years, I've never been more fulfilled in my life because
wow.
I know I'm walking in my purpose and my calling in life right now.
Yeah, there is something bigger going on.
Amen.
Sometimes,
Amen.
isn't there?
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, great. So again, so much to go into. One of the things that I want to talk about is, and perhaps you can relate to this. So I spent a lot of my time as a business owner and then as a coach. And as I begin to elevate, because I came from these same spaces that we're actually trying to uplift now. And as I overcame, I wanted to share that, right? And so I became a coach. And I would volunteer and do basketball coaching and sports training and just be connected with the community any way that I could. And as I did that, I was still achieving high levels of success in business and materials, things like that.
Mhm.
And then I had I too have four children. You have three. I have
Mhm.
three plus a stepson who's great. So it's a blended family. So I totally understand the fatherhood thing. And you see your kids grow up, right? And they become their own people. And
Mhm.
my oldest child, my daughter, is a social warrior.
Mhm.
She and from the time she was about 17, when they get when she got her own mind and how she wanted to be in the world and how she wanted to impact the world. And she was challenging me. She was going, Dad, that coaching stuff is great, but we gotta burn the system down because it's oppressive and it's keeping people down and all these things. And we would have these debates. And I
Uh-huh.
was in the mindset of overcoming, right? And I
Mhm.
felt my own overcoming, and
Mhm.
I saw the path for me doing that, and I
Mhm.
wanted to help individuals doing that. And
Mhm.
my reply to burn the system down was, look, the more we work on strengthening the individual,
Mhm.
the more the system doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And I could speak to her that like that um from experience, because that is the path that I took.
Mhm.
Not to say that, we need to keep an oppressive system in place.
Right.
However,
Yeah.
we need to strengthen individual
Mhm. Mhm.
to build these spirits and these bodies so
Yeah.
that it doesn't matter what gets thrown at us. We have the internal fortitude that have developed to overcome it.
I love
And
it.
so that
Yeah.
brings me to just the title of your book, Unreasonable Responsibility. And I'm going to let you talk about that a little bit more. But Dr. Sanders, I want to read a quote first, because this really intrigued me. It is, the disease of entitlement has infected society, keeping us from functioning properly and hindering our ability to make positive change in the world around us. Unreasonable responsibility is a bold wake up call for leaders ready to challenge the entitlement mindset that had that has us heading towards epic catastrophe. And so those are your words.
Mhm.
And so talk to us about that. I mean, there's so much to unpack there.
Mhm.
And you call it unreasonable, which is really ironic and funny to me, because it's like, okay, it's like the salesman saying, I'm going to sell you something, but I first want to tell you that it's unreasonable.
Yes.
But stay with me, because you're going to find the value in that unreasonable approach here. So
Yes.
so 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 Dr. Sanders, talk to us about that unreasonable responsibility.
Yeah. So absolutely. And a couple things there. First of all, I had what I call my Popeye moment. I talk about that in the book and for those of us who are older, we remember Popeye, where he got to the point where he just says, "I just can't stand it no more." He took his spinach and all that, right?
And I can stand no more. Yeah.
I can't stand it no more. I can't stand it. And that's how it got for me when it came to entitlement,
Mm,
because I was seeing it in our schools and our politics and the churches and sports. It was just one of these things where it was just people were responding from a sense of entitlement. And what I
mm,
started to do is I started unpacking that a little bit. And what I looked at is kind of two ways that we see the world. One is through what I call a rights-based mindset, right? Which feeds entitlement. It's all about, what rights do I have? I have a right to this. And what I believe is that there are some rights that we have that are inherent, and we got to fight for them. And all of that is great. But you said this earlier too, so well, where yes, you can have some of the rights that may or may not be honored, and you can have people that may try to oppress you, but there's still a strength that you have a responsibility for and an opportunity to develop. And so that was my way of kind of getting at that a little bit and getting away from just focusing on just our rights, because I feel that that is very limiting when you only focus on what I have a right to. And so that was one way of talking about this idea of entitlement. But on the responsibility side, what I say is a responsibility based mindset is a little different than that. I'm a big fan of Viktor Frankl.
Oh, Man's Search for Meaning. We were going to talk
Yeah,
about
you
that
got
later.
it.
Go
You
ahead.
got it. Okay, okay. So these mindsets are built on that premise. So what Viktor Frankl, for those of you who are not familiar, Viktor Frankl was in a few different concentration camps, during the Holocaust. And what he did is he identified in these concentration camps how there were people that didn't make it, and there were people that barely survived, but there were actually people who were able to thrive in a concentration camp. And what he saw, it had nothing to do about the conditions, because they all had the same conditions. They were all in oppressive conditions. They were all in prison physically, but there were some people that were able to have a mind and a heart and a soul that allowed them to be free and find a sense of meaning and purpose. So that's the whole premise of the book. And
Yeah.
what he distinguished is, he said, a couple things that relates to this rights-based, responsibility-based mindset. One, he said, when you think about life, it shouldn't be what life owes you, which is a rights-based approach. Life is all about, what do I owe life? That's a responsibility-based approach. And so I think those are two different ways of looking at things. And then he further talked about it in terms of the United States. He says, he recommended that we erect a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast to complement our Statue of Liberty on the East Coast. Because when you think about freedom, right? Freedom, the real corollary to that, or the real connection to freedom, is responsibility, and not so much what we oftentimes attach to freedom, which is our rights. So that was some of the philosophical grounding for that perspective, and in addition to my faith as well. So that had me come up with these two different mindsets. And so back to the responsibility side of this, when you think about responsibility, I do think for me, it does become unreasonable when you're in a world of entitlement, because any kind of responsibility you're asked to take may seem unreasonable. And it's the perception that is unreasonable. And by the way, the kind of responsibility we're talking about is the kind of responsibility that goes beyond what the world expects. Anything that goes beyond what the world is. So if I'm only doing what I'm reasonably called to do, that kind of responsibility, doing what's on my job description, okay, that's reasonable. But when I'm taking responsibility to do what needs to be done, I was just having a conversation with some members of my team this morning, and there are times when, as the CEO, there may be things that they need me to do that may not be, quote unquote, specifically in my job description. But I need to step in and do it. If I need to drive a van in order to get some kids somewhere, that's what I'm responsible to do. It may seem unreasonable by world standards. So that's how it's a little bit of a play on words, but that's why we say it's a reason, because it goes beyond the world's expectations. So first and foremost, we got to have a responsibility-based mindset versus a rights-based mindset, but also recognizing that having this mindset may appear to be unreasonable because it goes beyond what the world expects of us.
Great. Oh my God. Thank you. Okay, so we're pushing up on a break. I want
Okay.
you to do one thing before we take the break.
Yes.
First, and there's information that people have to get a hold of you. Would you give the folks contact on how to get a hold of you if they want to ask questions, if they want to support Colorado Uplifts? And after that, tell folks how to get that book, Unreasonable Responsibility.
Okay, yeah. So first of all, to get a hold of me, it's pretty straightforward. jsanders@coloradouplift.org. Again, jsanders@coloradouplift.org. And in the book, probably the easiest way, just go to Amazon, Unreasonable Responsibility. I have a copy of it here. It looks like this. Actually, I'm in the process of getting a new cover, but for now, you can go to just type in Unreasonable Responsibility, go to Amazon, and you can order a copy.
Okay,
and then
great.
If they can't get you there, you can email me, and we'll figure out a way we could get you some. So Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you for that. Let's take a break. We're going to take a few minutes, come back on the other side, and pick up our conversation with Dr. Joe Sanders of Colorado Uplift. And before we go, if you want to get a hold of Full Circle Restorative Justice and get more information, it's fullcirclerj.org, or you can find us here at the Spiritual Justice Show at the Spiritual Justice Show on Facebook.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Pat. I'm the host of the Dr. Pat Show, and I am the creator of the Transformation Network, doing what we do in the world of positive radio, informed, educated, positive media. Independent radio hosts and independent networks have been the face of positive messaging over the past decade. So all of us here have decided we're going to put together an independent network that is going to enable people to bring their positive message of hope, inspiration, and conscious action to the forefront. Help us create a future of amazing, uplifting stories that can be told so we can tell our children and they can tell their children of what hope and conscious action is all about.
I want to thank you all for tuning us in, turning us on TransformationTalkRadio.com.
Tune in to the Flourish Frequency Show with me, Beth Larson, every third Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on Transformation Talk Radio. Get ready to activate and amplify the frequencies of success, happiness, and abundance so you can live a life of more joy, more energy, more passion, more money, and more meaning. For more information, visit BethLarsonCoaching.com.
Do you want to better understand and embrace neurodiversity? I'm Dr. Lori Noto, with over 30 years of experience working with diverse and unique individuals. Through my consulting and purpose-driven life coaching, I focus on empowering individuals with disabilities. My passion is advocacy, providing...
Are you ready to heal your mind?
Welcome back to the Spiritual Justice Show and our conversation with Dr. Joe Sanders, CEO of Colorado Uplift and author of Unreasonable Responsibility. And I understand why it's unreasonable a little bit more. We want to get back into a responsibility-based mindset instead of one of that is rights-based, is what I think I understand from that,
Absolutely.
Dr. Sanders. So thank
You
you
got
for
it.
clearing that up. So one of the things that I was activated with, and you're going to hear me say the word activated instead of sometimes triggered, because we were in a session once with restorative folks, and they're sensitive to a lot of different things, and the word trigger, somebody in the room had experienced gun violence, and that word triggering was activating for them. So they suggested that we use the word activate more. So that's why whenever possible, I use activate instead of trigger. So anyway, long-winded about that. But the thing that strikes me is that, so there's a point, and I talked about the discussions that I had with my daughter, break the system down versus strengthen the individual, and really it's all of it, right?
Yes.
It's just who's doing what work where, and what, how much priority is this organization or this individual doing as opposed to this one. But for me, one of the tightropes that I have to work individually as a person is this belief about needing to reform the system. And also this realization, and mine is spirituality, that drives me. And the realization, when I realized my origins and where I came from and the spiritual nature of me, and the name of the show is the Spiritual Justice Show. And for me, the realization that my creator created this being that was capable of so much greatness. And I don't want to be tooting my own horn or anything, but to make the point, and as I mentor young people and I'm trying to give them that same message, I need to take it on myself that if this is possible for me, and when I'm aligned with this gift that I was given, and I am aligned with the purpose and meaning that it was originally planted in this soul to do the work that I am meant to do, there ain't a system in the world that can stop me. And so there's a tightrope walk for me in I'm an executive director reforming the criminal justice system. So I'm doing this work. But at the same time, understanding this empowerment that lies right here. And it's really, really individual. So talk to us a little bit how, Dr. Sanders, you strike that balance, because you talked about the difference between a responsibility-based mindset and a rights-based mindset. And you're also doing the work. And it's kind of, you're addressing a system at the same time too, but your focus is on those individuals. So talk to us about how you maintain that balance.
No, that's a great question and a space to be in, right? And I think part of it is just being willing to be in that space and understand that it's a both and, right? I think sometimes if we do go to an either or proposition, individual or this, that's where we find ourselves missing things, right? Because there's a gap that's there and there's a messiness that we have to get into when we start blending the individual and in a greater society. With that said, as I look at this and when we think about responsibility specifically in the book, the way I unpack that is I say, we think about taking responsibility. We all have spheres of responsibility, right? We have this personal sphere of responsibility where there's commitments I make that I am responsible for. And I call it this idea of my core, right? How do I live out? How do I stand on my core? How do I have integrity with my core, the values, the convictions that I have? How do I strengthen that? That's kind of more at that individual, that soul level. And then the next sphere of responsibility is all about the relationships. I have relationships that I can have with people, or I need to have with people. And again, I need to have enough responsibility to cover the commitments I have in my relationships. That's where things like forgiveness may come into play, right? If there's something that I'm committed to, I may have to be unreasonable and forgive somebody who's treated me a certain way. That may be an unreasonable responsibility that I have to a person. I may have to believe in somebody, even when that person's not being their best possible self. I might have to believe that they still can be their best possible self. So those are the kinds of, I may have to invest in somebody, even when the rest of the world would walk away and say they're not worth investing in. Again, it may seem unreasonable, but given my commitment at the relational level, that's what I need to do. And then the third level is the societal levels of responsibility. And that's really where I look out in the world and I see things that are so, and I see how they should be, and I'm willing to go and stand in that gap. And so what I believe is that when you think about the spheres of responsibility, there is this personal sphere that we talked about. There's a relational sphere of responsibility, and then there's a societal sphere of responsibility. And I look at it kind of like concentric rings, right? And you start with your core, you strengthen your core, and you think about what stands do I need to take as an individual? And then at the relational level, what promises do I need to make? And then at the societal level, what declarations do I need to stake? And so that's how I talk about this idea of responsibility. And I really do believe if we do a deep dive into self and we are really committed to these relationships and we're willing to stake our claims and some declarations in the world and live that out, we can see one alignment of those things, but we also see transformation and change in the world around us.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. That is fantastic. Wow. So with that, and you're obviously making an impact through your organization. You're making an impact through, sharing your work through your book. and you do talks all over, and so you're out there spreading these messages and having impact. And there's, you know, we wouldn't do this work, and I'm speaking for myself now. I wouldn't do this work, and I want to see if there's alignment here. If there wasn't a bit of optimism that what we do matters,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
we can have impact. We're not just going to be punching a brick wall that we know is not going to do anything. So
Yeah.
you're out there doing it, and there's these other things that are going out there that could set us back, or are barriers or obstacles to us fulfilling the goals and the visions that we set out to change. And so, what are some of the challenges that you're facing right now in these times?
Yeah, so I think part of the biggest challenge is something we talked about earlier is just helping to really shift mindsets. I'll often say that in order to transform others, right, we have to make sure we're transformed. And I think having people that do this work on board and being able to see, the work as not just a limited program or focused, like you said, on just a system, but really being willing to do the deep dive and see, humanity, and then see the soul, and understand, the faith, the spiritual, the moral, the character, all of those components and how important that is. I think just shifting our mind to appreciate that and have a more holistic approach to how we develop and how we engage. I believe that's important. I find that also sometimes people like to take positions as opposed to standing on principle. I talk in my book about, and it's not something original, actually. Eric Swanson, wrote a book on community transformation. He talks about this idea of bounded set versus centered set engagement. And what a bounded set engagement is that I only connect with people who have the exact same beliefs that I have. And sometimes that type of thinking gets in the way. Centered set says, let's align based on principle or based on what we care about. Who cares about, immigration, or who cares about single moms? Who cares about, children that are challenged in schools academically? Who cares about that? And what are the principles that we need to align on? So by focusing on that, that allows us to come together and impact in a different way than if I'm stuck in my agenda, you're stuck in your agenda. If I'm stuck in my belief system, you're stuck in your belief system. So I think sometimes just getting us out of that, positional, my position, your position, my focus and belief, your focus and your belief, and get to the place where we say, okay, what is a principle that we can align on? What is something that we can care about? That to me seems to be a challenge, and an increasing challenge in this environment. And, just to be candid, especially with this political environment that we're in, I think we run to the extremes, and we oftentimes camp out in a position. And in the process of doing that, we lose the principle.
Great. Thank you for sharing. And so it's, with that, and we didn't talk about your background, and you spent a lot of years with the U.S. Air Force at the Academy. Talk a little bit about, and anytime I meet somebody with a military background, it's like, one of the things that jumps out is discipline. There's a discipline there, especially 17 years, right? And you talked about your father being a pastor, which also to me speaks to, again, discipline to some level. So there, I would make an assumption with these that Dr. Sanders is, and even saying Dr. Sanders has a somewhat disciplined outlook on life. But talk to us about, some of the influences and maybe, the overarching lesson and what struck you about your experience with the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah. So, my experience with the Air Force actually goes all the way back to my grandfather. My grandfather was in the Army Air Corps and fought in the Korean War.
Wow.
My father was in the Air Force for over 22 years. And like I said, I was in the Air Force for over 23. So Air Force for me was a way of life. But the thing that really attracted me to the Air Force and that stood out for me is what I would call the esprit de corps, right? And esprit de corps is the unity, the idea of coming together for a common purpose. And I remember growing up, and my father was a machinist, and I would spend a lot of time with him in machine shops. I would spend time with him, on the flight lines. And I too, like you, I love sports. And I remember telling myself that, if I can't play sports for the rest of my life, I want to be in a career that allows me to work as part of a team and as a unit, where this idea of esprit de corps is important. And so I would watch my father and his crew. They would come together and they'd have a mission to get a plane fixed and back in the air within hours, right? And so just to see them come together and accomplish that mission as a team, that's something that was really, really attractive to me. And then the other part of that, though, you mentioned the discipline, I did appreciate the fact that there was order and there was intentionality. And, my dad, I used to shine his boots, make sure he was sharp and help crease his sleeves and all that. So that was part of it as well. And I can appreciate that. But the thing is, what I really appreciated more was, again, the mindset and the importance of doing that, because it mattered to mission. People being where they were supposed to be, doing what they were supposed to do, coming together to do that. And you mentioned the sports piece of things and sports side of things. I actually had that as something that was reinforcing as well. Growing up as an athlete, knowing what it looked like to get up at 5 a.m. to make sure I'm doing what I need to do. All that, Phil, ties back to what we were talking about earlier, to the unreasonable responsibility, right?
Yes.
If most people, the most of the expectation is, oh, wait a minute, you're going to do what? That might seem unreasonable. But for me, it actually was reasonable, because I needed to do this in order to be better for my team. Military, there were times when I got calls in the middle of the night, and we had, a place we had to be, and we had to be there on time or early in the right uniform at the right time, because the mission depended on it. I got to understand the benefits and the importance of being disciplined, and tie that to the outcomes of the mission. So anyway, kind of ramble a little bit there, but those are the ways that discipline showed up for me. But also what stuck with me in the military was this idea of coming together, this idea of unity. And I think that's also what kind of guides me today. When I think about, the community coming together, I see the benefit of people coming together to accomplish something great. We defend our nation better when we come together. One of the really neat things about the Air Force is, in the military as a whole, is over the past several years, we've really, really got into what we call joint warfighting, where the Army and the Air Force and the Marines, and we work together now in ways that we didn't have to years ago. And so I love seeing that. But that mentality of working together, that esprit de corps, is something that I hope I'm bringing to the community today as I help lead Colorado Uplift, to try to find other partners. This, we got to be on the front lines of this war. Whether it's war on poverty, improving education, you pick an element out there, drugs, whatever we're dealing with, being able to come together in a unified way for a common and noble purpose is something that the military taught me, and something I'm trying to apply now.
That is fantastic. Again, another point of alignment. Where have you been, my brother? I mean, there's so much. I mean, oh my goodness. So yeah, and again, it's like it's one of the things about the show here. It's like I want to highlight all of the organizations doing the work of uplifting our young people. And like you say, so we can come together, share thoughts, share resources, share approaches. And just because what we believe in, we talk about this in our organization when we meet with our partners, is like, look, Full Circle is a snapshot in time, restorative justice. Actually, when they go through a process, we meet a young person in a time of trauma in their life. It's a snapshot in time. There was what led to it that happened before. There's going to be the healing that hopefully continues on afterwards. And we want to be part of the hub in the wheel to make sure that that young person is connected to all of the resources that they need to be whole and on a path of contribution and healing and meaning and all those things, right?
Yeah.
And we are one thread in that tapestry. But we need all of that tapestry to actually be successful in what we're doing. And that's kind of what you are just speaking to right there.
Yeah,
So
no,
thank you.
good.
Thank you. Yeah, for elevating that concept.
No,
Let's hear about and again, we talked about sports and we both love sports. And sometimes sports is about winning. So, so let's talk about that. What are you proud of? What wins can you talk about, either generally or specifically, that just, keeps you going? Because, sometimes we learn great lessons from setbacks, right? But sometimes we learn great lessons and get more inspiration from a win. So share something about that for us.
Yeah, so I'll share a couple, one at a real personal level and then a broader organizational level. So 2 weeks ago, we hosted our graduation celebration for the students that are graduating from our, from high school, but from our program at the high school level. And we invited all the, we invited family members and, staff, friends. So we had a few hundred people here celebrating that. And obviously seeing all the students, we give them their cords, representing the graduates of Uplift, and we say some nice things about them. There's music, there's dancing, and really, really neat time. But the thing that struck me most that night was a conversation I had with a grandmother who basically waited for the room to clear out and asked her son to go over and have me come over. And her granddaughter had graduated from our program. She didn't speak, real good English, so she had her son translate for us in our conversation. And what she told me was how grateful she was for Uplift for transforming their family's life and the difference that we made in her granddaughter's life. And what was more compelling to me was how she told me she didn't have perfect English because we used a translator and she was still trying to say it. But what said everything that needed to be said were the tears streaming down her face as she communicated that to me. I said to myself, in your words, this is a win. This is a reminder of why we do what we do, not just for the individual student, but for her to say our family was impacted by your program. And as we talked earlier, we want to transform lives. We also want to transform communities. And so that was pretty telling. At a broader level, about a few months ago, maybe 3.5 months ago, we moved into a new space. So we just purchased a property, 6.5 acres and about 70,000 square feet of building space, where we now can be a little bit more expansive and intentional in our community work. We have a strategic plan that called for us to have more of an epicenter, what I call epicenter of possibilities, where we could be more entrenched in the communities. A lot of the work I mentioned to you before, we do work in schools and we take kids up to the mountains, skiing, snowboarding. So we have a lot that we do with the students, but we didn't have dedicated space to do a lot of programming. We had some admin space that we're renting out. Well, we've been on the market and on the hunt for property now for about 5 years. And we've had some properties that we looked into. It didn't work out. That weren't wins for us. But this property that we finally settled on it is a win. And so we're excited about this property. It's here in Aurora and it borders on Denver. So we're able to continue the work that we're doing in the schools, but we also have planned for establishing a community resource center where we can have some of our partners come and serve alongside of us, providing the resources that we know not just our students need, but their families need. And whether it's English as a second language, whether it's legal advice, whether it's medical care, mental health services. So those are the kinds of things that we want to provide out of this space. We also have a leadership training center that we're creating here. And then we'll have something that you'll appreciate as well, a sports complex. We have a 4-court basketball gym. We're working right now with some partners to put a turf field with some pickleball courts, some lighting and fencing, and it'll be a community resource. And so for us, we think this is a huge win because it's something that we had in our strategic plan back in 2019. And to see it come to fruition today, where I'm sitting here literally on this campus now, and already starting to create partnerships and get some traction in the community that we're serving in, that to me is a win.
That is great. Fantastic. And congratulations on that, on all
Thank
of
you.
it. And again, more congratulations and heartfelt gratitude for being on the front line, doing the work that you're doing and bringing that service to your community. We're coming to a close here. I'm going to give you one more chance. I want you to tell the folks again how to get a hold of you and how to go get that book before we close up here, Dr. Sanders.
All right. Yes. Thank you for that. It's J Sanders at coloradouplift.org. J Sanders at coloradouplift.org. And yes, Unreasonable Responsibility. You can just pop on Amazon and order your copy. And like I said, if you have problems and shipment issues or anything like that, if they're out of stock, feel free to reach out to me directly at the email address, and we'll make sure you get your copy.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, my big takeaway here is unreasonable responsibility and the distinction you made between a right-based mindset and a responsibility-based mindset. And that's going to go with me for forever. So thank you for sharing that with us all. And thank you for your commitment to uplift and actually develop leaders and give those young people that you serve the opportunity to lean into a part of themselves that before they came to you, they may not have known was there. And that is so important for us to move and elevate and evolve as a society. And organizations like yours and you, and I'm gonna give a shout out to your staff because they too deserve credit for and I talked about you being on the front lines, but as an executive director and understanding the job, there's people who are a little bit closer more consistently that I want to give accolades to in your organization. So thank you. Thank your organization. And I'm gonna make an ask. Dr. Sanders, I'm going to reach out every now and then because you're one of the people who I just want to just check up on, see what you need, see how I can support. And then I maybe want to do a follow-up because, I would like to have you back. And with the caveat, I would like you to bring one of the young people who you've impacted on and let them tell their story if that would be a possibility for you in the future. Because that's one of the shifts that we want to make too, is to make sure we do a lot of elevating of the organizations doing the work, but we also want to get underneath that and talk to those young people who are positively affected by this wonderful work that we're doing.
100% agree. Yeah, no, I love it. Yes. I love it all. Thank you.
So we'll be back. Dr. Sanders, again, big gratitude. Thank you so much for joining us and having this wonderful conversation. You have been watching the Spiritual Justice Show, a conversation with Dr. Joe Sanders, CEO of Colorado Uplift and author of Unreasonable Responsibility. I'm your host, Eric Lee. If you want to get a hold of us, find us at the Spiritual Justice Show on Facebook. Go out there. Don't just sit. Don't do the next meditation. Don't do the next retreat. Get out there, get involved, and help mentor a young person. That will truly make an impact for our society and our communities. Amen. So long.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me, Eric S. Lee, on the Spiritual Justice Show. You've heard me say it before. Restorative justice alone can't get us there. Repairing a wound matters. But if the system keeps cutting, the wounds return. Social justice fights for equity. But if we forget the human spirit, policy feels hollow. Transformative justice shifts culture, but without compassion, the changes just don't last. That's why spiritual justice completes the circle. It heals the heart while changing the system. It restores dignity while shifting culture. It brings spirit back into justice. And that's where you come in. Tune in each first and third Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time on the Transformation Network as we rise up, spiritual justice warriors. This means you choosing courage, compassion, and creativity in a call to action. Until next time, walk with courage, lead with compassion, live with spirit, because justice becomes here in the soul, and it continues with warriors like us. Join our community at spiritualjustice.net.